Are you tired and overwhelmed by today's big and tedious lifestyle? Well, I have news for you. There is a movement that has been around for generations called van life and minimalistic living. You see, van life and minimalistic living is not only better than the average lifestyle, but less work and more cost efficient. In today's speech, I'm going to convince you, the audience, to go try out van life and minimalistic living out for yourselves and live out your dreams through adventure. First, I'm going to discuss the societal outlook of van life and minimalistic living throughout the generations and how it might affect future generations. Second, I'm going to talk about the environmental and psychological outcomes of van life and minimalistic living. Finally, I'm going to give you, the audience, the tools and preparation to try out van life and minimalistic living for yourself. When an individual thinks about van life and minimalistic living, they usually think of today's generation and how it affects today's young adults and adults moving on to their next stage of their life. However, this is incorrect. Because van life and minimalistic living has been around for generations, many forget that the roots where it came from. In the article Joanna Pocock wrote, The New Nomads, written in 2019, she discusses the Beat generation of the 50s and 60s wander spiritually through their van life to run away from their society. You see, in 1950s and the 1960s, it was normalized to be part of the society that you were growing up to be part of, as to follow your parents' rules and your grandparents' rules. But many authors and novels throughout the time in the 1950s and 60s, for example, Jack Kerouac's On the Road, written in 1957, romanticizes running away from this oppressed society that they grew up in. Another example of a society going towards van life and minimalistic living was in 2008. Although it differs from the 50s and 60s due to the economic crisis, which led many Americans to lose their lifestyle, their homes, and their jobs. So they had to switch it up. They had to change into a new lifestyle called van life and minimalistic living. Now we look at our generation now and how we view van life and minimalistic living as a business outlook. Many individuals inside the community of van life and minimalistic living look towards more of the business aspect of it as they commercialize their lifestyle to the younger generations of today's through social media such as Instagram and Facebook, which will later affect their lifestyle and how they live later in the future. When a person thinks about van life and the positivities according to van life, they usually think of the individual and how the individual growth is mainly affected through living in a van and switching up lifestyles. Well, this is wrong. There are many more positivities to van life and minimalistic living, such as Sammy Carolla, in her article Dream Big and Live Small, written in 2019, discusses the California housing crisis, where the California housing crisis was due to the overpopulation and overcrowding of California during the time, this of course being in the 2010s. The solution that Sammy Carolla talks about in her article would be van life and minimalistic living, as many younger adults who populated California moved around the country, leading to Californians having less population density in the time. I believe that many other states in our country are struggling with overpopulation and overcrowding and coming to the problems such as the California housing crisis. So in return, we can stop this from happening earlier by having more young adults transfer into a different lifestyle such as van life and minimalistic living. As well as the housing crisis, the van life and minimalistic living also solves many other problems, such as the environmental aspects, as according to always.com, the van life and minimalistic living and the individuals associated with it releases our carbon footprint of the world and will maybe save future generations. What we talked about so far was the societal outlook of van life and minimalistic living and how it was in effect throughout the generations. The main point that I'm trying to persuade you is to affect later generations and impact the next generation of young adults to solve problems such as the environmental problem I discussed with the carbon footprinting and the California housing crisis, that becoming a bigger problem for the United States. Finally, I'm going to give you the tools and preparation to get started. Learning from firsthand experience, Combi Lifer named Leah Jade, who owns a YouTube channel called Combi Life, who traveled from Peru, Mexico to Alaska in only a Volkswagen Combi van, she discusses how to get started in van life. The first step that she discusses is finding a van or a suitable housing unit to live in for a long period of time. You have to take account your friends and your spouses and you, of course, living in a tiny space and adjusting into that from a bigger lifestyle as the normal one in our society. The second thing she points out and talks about are their partners. As I discussed earlier, many individuals nowadays are looking towards Instagram and Facebook as partnerships and commercializing their lifestyle. In this, you can find many websites online who are looking for free advertisement and start off there and then build your own partnerships with many little companies who might grow later into bigger companies. Finally, we are going to discuss the goals and the obstacles. The goals and the obstacles that you need to have during your time here and during your time in this new lifestyle would have to be what you think about yourself in your later life and what your goals can be later. There are many obstacles, however, as many individuals and many groups are against van life and think that it is legal and should be abolished. So in the speech today, we discussed the societal outlook and the environmental outcome and how you can get started in van life and minimalistic living. I hope I persuaded you to try out your own dreams and live out an adventure that you want to in later life. I encourage you, the audience, to go support many van lifers on YouTube, as subscribing to them will help them gain profit, and many have Patreon notices to help them grow as an individual and help them grow as a company in their journey as they go on with their life. You can also sign a petition on change.org called Van Life Illegal. Thank you so much, and I hope that you live out your dreams with adventure.